Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing part 210 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. Where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got a couple really cool extinct animals, one I'm actually really excited to talk about. We've got a couple mammals, or a few mammals actually. We've got some fish, and we've got a really cool bird that we'll get into as part of kind of like a bit of a pack going on. But yeah, I'm really excited to get stuck into this one. So first up, we're going to be starting off with the blue spine unicorn fish done by J Aquatics. You know, a classic fish motto. It's nice to see them actually coming back a little bit. So let's see what we can spot in here. And look, there actually is one swimming this time. Yay! But anyway, this is the blue spine unicorn fish, Naso unicornis, also known as the short-nosed unicorn. These guys are a species of marine ray-finned fish belonging to the family Acathuridae, or the sturgeon fish, the unicorn fishes, and the tangs. So that big group of tangs and stuff. They are found in the Indo-Pacific and are occasionally found in the aquarium trade. They are quite a large species. They grow to about 70 centimeters in length and are called the Kala in Hawaii, the Dawa in New Caledonia, and the Ta in Fiji. And however, the name Kala refers to all three species of unicorn fish found across Hawaii. So they're first formally described as Chileodon unicornis by Finnish explorer and apostle of Karl Linnaeus Peter Fossakel, who gave the type locality as Judea. Then it was named Narco fronticornis. It was a replacement name in 1917, but then it kind of came back and then it was put as own genus as well. So you can see decent sized fish. They have a bluish grey body with two blue spines on each side of the base of their tail, and a shorter rostrum or bony horn on their forehead. And in the small fish, these horns are missing, so it's typically found in adult fish like this that you'll get that. They are a sexually dimorphic species, so the males have much larger tail spines than the females. So let's see if this is a female. No, this is a male, so it kind of gives you an example there. See if you can spot a female, see if they've actually done the sexual dimorphism. They don't have to, of course. I'm just curious to see if it's a thing. So you can kind of, actually, yeah, you can notice the example there. It is a little bit different. You can kind of see a little bit more bigger spines. You can definitely see the difference a bit there. At least visually. It's a male. Yeah. Kind of see it. Anyway, the much larger tail spine. So the tail spines are these, but these are quite a bit bigger. You can kind of notice that. Males are on average have slightly longer horns or slightly bigger tail streamers than females as well. So that's another way that isn't seem to have been shown in here. They do also have a leather-like skin instead of scales, so they don't have those traditional kind of scales. They've got that more skin. And they can grow up to about 70 centimeters long, or about 28 inches, and the largest one caught was about 5.8 kilograms, or just about 13 pounds. And they are very common in the tropical Indo-Pacific. They range usually at temperatures between 25 and 29 degrees Celsius, or 77 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And in terms of their ecology, they are a near-shore fish, with the juveniles tending to stay close to the shore, while the adults tend to live from shallow to the beginning of the deep water up to about 40 feet. They do also enjoy spots with waves or strong surges, and they live often solitarily on coral reefs or be found in small schools or as part of larger schools of other fish species. And in terms of their diet, they are herbivores, and they'll feed on brown and red algae, or also leafy blades. And they're one of the small number of species that actually consumes fleshy macroalgae, or seaweed, and this actually makes them of great importance to coral reef ecosystems, since they will control the numbers of seaweed to, help promote the growth of corals. They've also been recorded eating invasive algae, which has established themselves around Hawaii, which tends to grow mats, and these guys actually feed on them. That helps reduce the invasive algae. So that's quite interesting to think how a native species is beating back an introduced species, which is quite cool. But in terms of human use, They are eaten because they are quite abundant. They can be caught using nets, hook and line techniques, or spearfishing. They also have a strong odor and flavor due to their diet, and when skinned, the meat is usually a slight pink-red taint to it, with a firm and moist texture. And the kala name, which is Hawaiian, was an important food source for pre-colonial Hawaiians as well. And also their skin was actually stretched over half coconut shell to make a small knee drum, which is interesting as well. And they are controlled. They have permits. You're only allowed to kill or take about 4 fish per person per day. So there is a catch limit, and they are considered quite a cultural significant animal. They can be found on post stamps and company logos and a lot of those things. So yeah, quite cool. So another cool species that we get to talk about, blue spine unicorn fish, done by J Aquatics. Really, really cool one there. So next up, we've got by Sky Polaris, we have got the Congo lion. So let's have a look at the Congo lion. So this is a population of Panthera leo, or the northern lion, which is a modern subspecies, but originally was described as its own subspecies, which is Panthera leo azacata. And these are belong to a lion population found in the northern Congo or northeast Congo and in Uganda. They're also known as the Congo lion or the Uganda lion. These were a population of northern lions living in northeastern grasslands in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and parts of Uganda. Though it once lived throughout the northeastern Congo tropical rainforest, but is actually believed to be locally extinct there. They are pretty difficult to distinguish from other lions, and some say they do not differ from other lions at all, and it's unknown how many of the Congo lions live in the wild, and there seem to be none in captivity. So yeah, not too different from your typical lion. So originally they were considered their own subspecies, but the new classification as of 2017 for lions is there's 2 main subspecies. There's Panthera leo, which includes the northern parts of North Africa and these guys as well, and Uganda and stuff like that, up until the Barbary lion and the Asiatic lion. Those are Panthera leo. And then your southern lions are, your ones ranging from southern Africa and East Africa. Those are ones that are, the southern population, or Mizbakata or something like that. But yeah, another really cool mod there. So there's the male. Let's have a look at the female. You can see a little bit of colour variation there. Comes out really nicely. Let's see if you can spot the little cubs, because they are very cute. So yeah, another one of those kind of little mods. We'll see what other information we can get from in here. All called the forest lion because they prefer wooded habitats. Its mane was darker than less extensive than open savanna lions adapted to human forests as well. So yeah, this individual population can vanish before the whole species of the whole. So they are considered. I don't think they actually are considered extinct. There is some kind of declines in their population, but I don't know that they're considered extinct. I'm not sure how true that is. But yeah, definitely, it's a great example of how populations evolve to local conditions, because as I mentioned, the Congo and Uganda are a lot more closed forest compared to the open savannas that lions typically evolve to live in. But yeah, we're going to carry on anyway. Another great one by Sky Polaris. Next one is a great cakes mod. We do love great cakes mod. And there's an extinct species this time. I love covering these extinct species. So this one is called Gazella spyra torcanalis. I believe how you say that. So it's an ancient relative of the blackbuck, actually. So these guys are an extinct genus of antelope. They are in the group Antelone, which includes the true antelope, things like blackbucks and gazelle and stuff like that. The true, as we mentioned, the true antelope. These guys are an extinct genus of antelope that lived during the Miocene and the Pleistocene, so up to quite recently, of both Europe and Asia, so they're a bit more northernly. Not typically where you think of finding antelope, but that's where they did live. This species itself, Torticornis, is actually known from France, Italy, Crimea, Russia, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey, and Georgia, with the other species Paragiensis is actually come from the Pliocene, so it's a bit older. So it's known from the Pliocene, so that's between 5 to 2 million years ago, and is known from Tibet, so probably slightly differently evolved, better adapted for higher climates. We don't actually know that much about this animal, but we do know from teeth found in Greece they were a mixed feeder, so they were both grazers and browsers. and they would have periodically grazed. So let's have a look. That's a really beautiful male there. I really like this one because it's not just a black buck, but it's actually given a different sort of, look to it, and that's what Great Cakes mods, I think, really well excels in with these extinct animals, making them feel like real animals, but also make them distinct enough to not just look like a rehash, not just like a slightly bigger, like with the Gigantopithecus. It's not just a giant orangutan; it's a completely new thing. And we'll have a look at the cute little fawn. Very, very cute little guy. Big fan. Let's see what other information. I want to make sure that we get all the information out of this guy. So yeah, Pleistocene fossils have been found. Yeah, they were tendency towards reduction amongst, that happened actually with a lot of different species. All right. We already kind of mentioned that, and also the small and rare Gamobe. Okay, that's interesting. Most of the postcranial bones, humerus, radius, ulna, tibia, and cecellum, are typical bovid in morphology. As a group with the rest, the middle was a major part of morphology distinct, having some cervid-like characteristics. So that means it had some of those metapodals, which are bones, which actually is a major part of the postcranial skeleton. It has some similarities more to deer than to other bovids, so other antelope and goats and things. And it suggests they either would have been an open habitat animal. And the interpopulation comparisons highlight several cranial frontal sutures and all of that. Sexual dimorphism, so they would have been an estimated, and so they would have had, 1-to-2 ratio, so 7 females and 3 males, potentially. So they would have been, more similar to like modern black buck in that regard, having a bit of bigger males. That's an evidence of sexual dimorphism, so bigger males and smaller females, as you can kind of see here. Looks really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. Another Great Cakes mod, just another banger from them. Really, really awesome. So we're going to be moving on now. So we are moving on another Sky Polaris mod who actually just updated it before putting up this video. So I was actually quite happy because I wanted to cover the updated version. This is the Hainan Black Crested Gibbon. All right, so we're back. Sorry, I just had to edit some bits out because that was really annoying how they were just going to the trade center. But anyway, we'll have a look at the female. So let's have a look here. So this is the Hainan Black Crested Gibbon, which is also known as Nemerchus hainanuus, which is the Hainan gibbon. So these guys are actually critically endangered species of gibbon that is only found on the Hainan Island in the South China Sea, so it's quite rare. It was formerly actually considered a subspecies of the eastern black crested gibbon from the Ho Binh and Cha Bang provinces of Vietnam and China, but molecular data, together with morphology and differences in its calls, suggest that it's definitely its own species, with its habitat consisting of broadleaf forest and semi-deciduous monsoon forests, and where it likes to feed on ripe, sugar-rich fruit such as figs, and also leaves and insects. So quite a varied diet there. Let's look at the male here. Why not? They are actually under threat of extinction. They are currently considered critically endangered. Historically, they were widespread in China, dating from the 17th century. Records suggest they were quite common across the southern half of China, and even though these records could present multiple species, the gibbon population was actually decreased quite a bit over the last half century. With the 1950s, more than 2,000 gibbons were found on the Hainan Island, with a study in 2003 only finding 13 total gibbons, split into two groups, and in 2004 only 19 gibbons living there. Though the most recent count suggests there is 22 of them. So they are very, very rare. So this actually would be considered quite a decent chunk of the population, which is very, very tragic to say, especially if they are considered their own species. We'll have a look back at the female again. Habitat loss, as I mentioned, primarily the cause of their decline, with poaching also considered to be a bit of a problem. Often the habitat destruction comes from, illegal pulp paper plant growers and other, agricultural things like that. And they have driven them to less suitable habitat, and they are actually considered quite vulnerable. like other species of gibbon, they do have what's called sexual dichromatism, which is males and females will have different colours. The male's almost completely black, as you kind of saw before. The big black one here, that is the male. And the female here is like a golden or buff colour with black patches. It includes a streak of black on her head, but for the most part she's yellow. Both male and females are quite slender with long arms and legs, but no tail, similar to other gibbons, and also use brachiation like gibbons, other species of gibbons, and civettes like other gibbons, and bond and mate and other gibbon like other gibbons. So in those regards, they are pretty much the same in that regard, even though they have some adaptations that have, in response to their reduced habitat. The few remaining gibbons are polygamous, so they kind of will have small groups and one breeding male and up to 2 females in the offspring. The stable pair bonds tend to have allowed the increase to decrease the in-birth interval, and the 2-year interbirth interval is shorter than most gibbon species because they are as well able to kind of compensate. Because they live in harems and things like that. They also have a shorter gestation period, and it observed that all sexually mature females in the wild are not breeding, but we don't know why. In terms of habitat selection, they like different types of forests on the island. They tend to like the old growth forest, which has trees about 10 meters or taller, which offers shelter and trees for their singing rituals. And it's home to at least six species of plants eaten by these gibbons. When these forests are destroyed, it takes a lot of time for them to regenerate, and a lot of it has been chopped down for rubber plantations and commercial logging. And as of 1999, only 4% of this original primary forest has been left. And they do split their time now between secondary and dwarf forests, with the secondary forests being less suitable, where they have less resources and are shorter trees than primary forests, but they can still survive in there. And these dwarf forests are even less favourable, and they tend to avoid them like the plague. In terms of human expansion, there is a lot less habitat for these gibbons. Also, there's been some reported hawk attacks on these gibbons, but the main threat is humans. With the human population in Hainan has actually just increased by 330% between 1950 and 2003. Also, there is financial pressure on these gibbons, as a female gibbon can be worth up to $300 in US dollars. And they were actually considered also prized for traditional medicines and led to mass hunts, which is also hurting their populations. They are considered umbrella species. We'll have a look at the babies while we talk about some other things, more positive things. So the reasons why these gibbons are important: they are considered an umbrella species. So these gibbons, that's not the adult. This is the one we want to look at. So this is the baby. There we are. So the Hainan gibbon is considered an umbrella species. So this designation basically means that it is a marker of good health and stability in an ecosystem, and alterations of its characteristics negatively affect the gibbons and will also negatively impact other species as well, which is quite important because these guys are seed dispersers for plants such as figs, which means when these guys are gone, there's less gibbons to fertilize or to disperse the seeds of figs and things like that, which means plants these figs can't recover quite as fast from the logging. And that being said, no gibbon species has gone extinct, and no other species of gibbon has gone extinct since the 1700s. So hopefully these guys hang out there. They're probably considered one of, if not the most endangered species of gibbon in the world, with only 22 left. But we've done conservation projects where we've recovered from far less, so hopefully these gibbons are given a good shot. So most of these limitations that these guys have, as we mentioned, is kind of their breeding characteristics does not lead them to rapid population growths, with a single female having a single offspring every 2 years, and the baby is dependent on the mother for about a year and a half. And furthermore, there is none in captivity where there can't be any captive breeding going on. Though in response to the declining, there is a big collaborative efforts to try and help the species of gibbon. A survey was backed by members of mainland China and the Hainanese people, to try and survey to see how many gibbons they were, and a lot of the problems, such as the habitat loss and the dissuasion from illegal loggers. So trying to figure out, first step of fixing a problem is realizing you have one. So they went to see what was actually causing these gibbons to decline, and found solutions. Dissuading illegal logging, like patrolling, bringing back habitat, reverting lowland plantations into habitable gibbon habitat, and planting myrtle and figs to help promote gibbon habitat as well. Um, so yeah, there has been some work, to try and promote their conservation. So it's quite cool there. Definitely a big fan. Really nice to see more animals brachiate and things like that. I love to see more gibbons and things, and definitely an important one to talk about. So yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. Sky Polaris, killing it with these kind of. I don't like to say the clone mods because they're not clones. They really aren't clones. I just want to see them brachiate a bit more. They aren't clones, but they are kind of more similar to other species in the game. Yeah, they're still really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. Alright, next up, we have got the Margay. So the Margay is done, this one is done by Gaboy and Jadora Pizza, the Dream Team. So another really cool little species here, really, really cute little guy. So the Margay is a really, really cool species of small wildcat known from Mexico, South America, Central and South America. They are nocturnal and are found in evergreen and deciduous forests. So the main characteristics is they're quite similar to the ocelot in appearance, the one that's actually in the game now. But the main difference is their heads are a little shorter and they have larger eyes and longer legs and tail. They weigh between 2.6 to 4 kilograms, or about 5.7 to 8.8 pounds, with a body length of 48 to 79 centimeters, or 19 to 21 inches, and have a tail length of between 33 to 51 centimeters, or about 13 to 20 inches. And unlike most other cats, they actually only have 2 teats, which is interesting as well. Its fur is brown and marked with numerous rows of dark brown or black rosettes and longitudinal streaks, as you can see there. The undersides are paler, ranging from white to buff, and then kind of the tail having dark bands, and then you can see they get more orangish as well, and they get circular markings on their ears their ears with the black bits, and then you have the white bit there. So another really cool one there. Let's see if we can spot the male who's actually woken up, it seems. It's very, very cute. And speaking of cats, I've got my flatmate's cat coming hang out with me. In terms of distribution, the Margay is distributed from the lowlands, the tropical lowlands of Mexico down into Central America to Brazil and Paraguay. They've been recorded in 24 of the 32 states of Mexico. And then they range for each as Uruguay and northern Argentina, where they live in almost exclusively dense forest, ranging from tropical evergreen to tropical dry forest, and also high cloud forest. And they're also found in coffee and cocoa plantations. And the only record of them in the United States was actually found somewhere between 1852 near Eagle Pass in Texas, and they're considered locally extinct in Texas. And their presence in the US is actually considered, uncertain. It's very likely they were in the past, but there's no really evidence to prove that, given the distribution, things like jaguars, we know jaguars range into North America. These guys very likely could have ranged into the US, as I mentioned, like Texas, but we don't really know, mainly because, that area is mostly desert, but there may be some areas where, of course, they might have been okay there. Fossilized Margay have been found in Texas, and it's considered like ocelots and jaguars. They may have lived in southern Texas, with Margay fossils dating between 46,000 years ago, actually being found in Brazil and also in Florida. So they may have been around that time. So behavior and ecology, they are skillful climbers and sometimes known as the tree ocelot because of their ability to climb, which is also a very interesting name. They spend most of their time in the trees, leaping after and chasing birds and monkeys in the treetops, and it can actually turn its ankle up to 180 degrees and can grasp branches equally with their fore and hind limbs. It can jump up to 12 feet or 3.7 meters horizontally. They also utilize their long tails and maintain balance while climbing, with morphological adaptations such as these as a strong indication that they thrive in ecosystems such as rainforest, where there's lots of vegetation, to provide the animal with protection from possible threats. And also, there have been some scientists that have conducted behavioral studies, found that they are denser and higher, their populations are denser with lots of trees and minimal human disturbance. So, in terms of their diet, dietary studies suggest that they feed mostly on small primates, such as titi monkeys, squirrel monkeys, tamarins, and marmosets, numerous types of birds and lizards, along with their eggs and young, small snakes, tree frogs, and arthropods. They also hunt other arboreal mammals, such as Ingram squirrels, eat grasses, as well as fruits and other vegetation to help with digestion, and they also could live and hunt its prey entirely arboreally. However, they'll sometimes venture the ground and eat things such as agoutis, armadillos, cabbies, and paka. In terms of their reproduction, the female margay is in estrus from 4 to 10 days over a cycle of 32 to 36 days, in which they attract a mate with a loud moaning call, with the male responding with yelping or making trilling calls. And pretty much most of this stuff is very similar to domestic cats. Gestation is about 80 days and generally gives birth to a single kitten. Very rarely there are two, usually between March and June. Kittens weigh about 85 to 170 grams or 3 to 6 ounces at birth, and they're relatively large for a small cat, and that is probably related to their long gestation period, so they tend to have one baby, but a much bigger one as well. The kittens open their eyes about 2 weeks and begin to eat solid food at about 7 or 8 weeks. And they reach sexual maturity at about 12 to 18 months of age and can live more than 20 years in captivity. So sadly, they do suffer from about a 50% mortality rate for the cubs. Usually mortality rates were previously lower, but this can be because of, factors. This may maybe not be a factor in their population decline. Given a pair of cats can raise 2 kittens in adulthood in their lifetime, population will be equilibrium, assuming 1 year is to reach breeding age, and as long as the cat survives endlessly reach 5 years on average, then the pair will produce 4 kittens at their replacement pair. Coupled with the problems of breeding captivity, they actually are quite difficult to increase in captivity, their populations. They're usually solitary, though, and they will live in a home range of about 11 to 16 square kilometres, and use scent marking, like urine marking and leaving scratch marks, like very much other species of cats, to mark their territory. And they also have been observed, believe it or not, mimicking the vocalizations of pied tamarins, an infant while hunting. So using mimicry to get prey, which I think is quite funny. And really, really cool animal. Their scientific name is Felis, or was originally Felis wildi, but now it's Leparus wildi. So that's along with ocelots and other types of South American small cats. And there was about 3 subspecies described, but I'm not sure how true they are. Just one from the Amazons, South and North, and one in Central America, kind of. But yeah, really, really cool little species. Do like a margay. Really great mod, Gaboy always makes some really awesome mods, and I'm actually quite liking their remasters coming out. Seeing some of their remasters are actually amazing. But yeah, we also got to have a look at the cute little baby, because we didn't get a look at the cute little baby. Look at the cute little cub. I deem this extremely adorable. Alright, now we've got a bit of a doozy. We've got another eagle, and I don't know who writes the Wikipedia pages for all the eagles. There's just so much information on there, packed with eagle info, which is a good thing, but means I've got to say a lot. But I do like, some information. But here we've got the crowned eagle, another really, really cool species, also known as the crowned hawk eagle, or just the African crowned eagle. These guys are a large species of birds of prey found in sub-Saharan Africa. And though in southern Africa they're typically found in more easterly areas, they prefer habitats that are primarily riparian woodlands and various forests. And they're the only extant member of their genus Stephanoctus, with the second species, the Malagasy crowned eagle, becoming extinct when early humans settled Madagascar. So we'll get into that as well later. So in terms of their taxonomy, they were originally Falco concordis. Then they were put in the genus Aquila, which is most other eagles. But at the moment, they're considered a specialized offshoot of the eagles, which is Stephanoctus as well. And they're a great example of convergent evolution, as they, with a much heavier harpy eagle, they're well adapted for killing quite big prey as well. And as I mentioned, they are, being a large-bodied eagle for killing prey. And we also mentioned the Malagasy crowned eagle, which is a close relative. They were similar in size and form. They would have preyed on lemurs instead of monkeys. So, these guys like to prey on monkeys. The Malagasy one would have preyed on lemurs, and they probably would have gone extinct when humans got there within the last, kind of few hundred years. Apparently, the Margay eagle also became extinct due to loss of prey and habitat. The living eagle has no considered subspecies, though there is some slight differences in some populations, which we're not really going to get into as well, because we've got a lot to cover. But in terms of their size, they are a very large eagle. They measure from about 80 to 99 centimeters in length, or about 31 to 39 inches, which makes them the fifth longest extant eagle. The female also weighs about 3.2 to 4.7 kilograms, or about 7 to 10 pounds, which is about 10 to 15% larger than the male, with the male being about 2.5 and 4.12, or about 5.6 to 9.1 pounds, with an average body mass of about 8 pounds or 3.6 kilos. They are the ninth heaviest species of living eagle, and their wingspan typically ranges from 1.5 to 1.8 meters, between 4 foot 11 to 5 foot 11, with the largest wingspan being a female of about 1.9 meters or 6 foot 3, and claims a wingspan of about 6 foot 7, needing confirmation. So about 2 meter wingspan is really pushing it. They're actually quite short wingspan for the bird size, with the same medium width as that of the tawny or short-toed snake eagle, which makes sense for the ecology. They tend to give it quite a good amount of movability in dense habitats, dense forests, things like that. So it makes sense for its ecology. The shape of it does really, the short, broad wings really work in dense habitats, which is quite interesting. They do have actually quite big claws. The tarsus are quite actually modest, but about 10 centimeters, and actually considered shorter. But they have much thicker and heavier talons compared to other species of eagle, so they got quite big. A largest Hilux claw was actually measured at about 4.9 centimeters, or about 1.9 inches. Some had been measured about 2.4 inches as well in some females, so quite big. These figures actually put the talons about the same size as the largest golden eagles, about half the size of a harpy eagle, which is definitely a much bigger animal. The sampling size, looking at large forest-dwelling raptors, there was actually 1 centimeter less than the harpy eagle or the huge, recently extinct Haas eagle. Slightly smaller those the Philippine eagle. So even though they're quite a bit smaller than them, they do have quite big claws in comparison, which makes sense for their ecology. So they do have proportionally large, quite big claws, which is interesting. The adult eagle, you can see, has got quite a striking plumage. The crown, as you can see, is a dark or rufous tinge brown with a black triple double crest. That actually gives it kind of like a triangular appearance. Its throat is brown-white, with the belly and breast being white, with dense bars, as you can see, those kind of bars going on there. And blotches, which is marked by its buff or rufous colours. The wing primaries are white and then tipped with, you can see these kind of black bits at the bottom there as well, so nothing too different there. And there's not really much sexual dimorphism between the species other than size as well. At the juveniles, I don't think these guys have actually had babies. I think that's one of the glitches this one has, that doesn't have babies at the moment, but I haven't really covered that. That's alright. But the babies themselves have strikingly different plumage. They have a white head and underside, would contrast their thighs and legs, which are heavily black. And then their back is light brownish grey, and they're kind of just fledgling chicks. They get the beginning to go in their adult colours. And up until about 15 months, when they leave the nest and have kind of left the nest, they have its first independence, and then they get their fully adult plumage. So in terms of their habitat, as we kind of mentioned before, they are found only on the continent of Africa, ranging from central Ethiopia to Uganda and Tanzania, and kind of range across those forests in the Congo and things like that. They do prefer dense woodland and rainforests, and which is obviously found in the Congo. They're also found in Southern Africa. In South Africa, they live in evergreen forests. So they don't necessarily live in rainforests. Any bits of Africa that have really dense forests with lots of monkeys for them to feed on, that's what they typically like to live. So very typical of most other raptors, they're non-migratory and are largely sedentary and have a fixed territory throughout the year during its adult life. There is evidence these birds move about to some degree, but that's not much as most other things. They are very vocal and actually quite noisy. They often call year round and may vocalize for lots of different reasons. Which range from loud whistles and things like that. Um, and some birds actually have accents in the sense they can actually drop more than 60 meters. Um, During this display, they have they have lots of different displays of things with wing flaps and dropping down and things like that. But they also call and have little voices and things like that. In disposition, they're actually considered quite considered nervous, or considered on edge or alert. So they tend to be a little bit more nervous in people around people as well. With some linkage being made of its forest habitat. Ironically, considering they actually have overactive behavior as well, but they are considered like highly intelligent and independent and inquisitive. They also are nearly fearless towards humans, unless shy from prior interactions, and usually prone to treat humans aggressively. But in falconry, they cannot be included to direct their hunting instinct towards large prey by increasing their hunger with typical eagles. So it's got to be a little bit different there. They tend to shun away from human activity, and they can be considered cowardly, but they're not really cowardly. Let's carry on. Crowned eagles are one of the most prolonged breeding cycles of any bird, so that's very interesting as well. It's common for raptors to live in the tropics and have to elongate a breeding period. They breed every 2 years with a breeding cycle that's approximately 500 days in duration. Most other species complete their breeding cycle under 6 months, and which is only about 35% the time it takes for these eagles. So while the incubation and nesting stage are an average for a tropical eagle, they have an extraordinary post-fledging time, about 9 to 11 months, which makes theirs so long. And the Harpy and Philippine eagle, although they are less extensively studied, it's believed it actually takes even longer for these guys to, because they're such big eagles, and it takes a lot of time for them to mature and become adults. And breeding for these guys pretty much occurs all year round, from the African wet and dry season from July to November, with individuals having ranges up to 200 square kilometers, depending on near the cities or the densities of prey. Though in southern Africa, the mean distance between nest sites can be 2 to 19 kilometers, square kilometers. And also, they reportedly breed every year in South Africa, but maybe because they have a high loss of juveniles to people, which is a bit sad. After engaging in the breeding display described as mentioned, they make a big forked nest, very similar to other species of eagle, typically between 12 to 45 meters off the ground. They will construct them. They'll use all sorts of different things to construct them. And they can be quite big. They can take about 5 months to construct, and they will be reused during different breeding seasons. And it's simple for an eagle pair to use a nest for more than 5 years. And most of them they'll build a very large nest, and the crowned eagle's no exception. And this guy actually makes one of the largest nests of all eagles. It gets to about 1.5 meters across, or about 5 feet across, about 50 centimeters or 20 inches deep. However, larger nests can be made. They get to 2.5 meters or 8 feet across and up to 3 meters deep. And they typically use dead or greener branches with a light covering of leaves and animal matter, which kind of covers that. So it's a really, really big nest. And they will use that over years, so there's not to worry there. But they will also use cliff faces sometimes to make their nests. Copulation will also take place in the nest, used several times a day as well. And they lay their eggs in South Africa from September to October, but as we mentioned, they kind of can do it all through the year. They typically only weigh 1 to 2 eggs. In some areas, they only weigh 1 egg. Some areas, they may lay 2. They're usually white, though some may be overlaid with sparse or red-brown markings. And the the eggs are moderate in size, about 68.2 to 53.6 millimeters, or about 2.6 to 2.11 inches as well. And then they will mate about 2 months' time. Incubation takes about 50 days, with 80-90% of egg incubation being done by the female during the day. Food is mainly brought to the nest by the male in the early stages of breeding, though sometimes they will both swap around as well. She'll bring food to the female every 3 to 5 days. And when they initially hatch, the young tend to be quiet, and then 2 eggs are laid. The younger one dies of starvation, typically because they'll even be outcompeted by the older sibling, very similar to other species of eagle. After hatching, the male kill rate will raise to 1 kill every 1.5 days, with the pair behavior can be variable, with some males being very attentive, or some are not very. But after 40 days, the young are capable of feeding himself, though is often still fed. Their first feathers will occur about 40 days old, and then they're ultimately covering it down in 76 days. And after 76 days, they'll tend to develop their wings, and then they will fledge at about 115 days, or 90 to 115 days is typically around there. On average, male chicks tend to be active wing flappers, and they fly on average about 10 days earlier than female chicks. And after fledging, they'll have a 95% percent a day, females attentive, and brood about 70-75%, with it decreasing. And then after fledging, they will remain in the neighborhood and of the nest, and they'll be fed every 3 to 5 days by either parent for the first 270 to 350 days of their life. So it then, slowly decreases and they start to become their own things. And they usually remain in the care of their parents up to about 11 months after they fledge, which is longer than any other raptor species. And this kind of helps them, grow up and kind of things like that. Grow up and become adult eagles. So in terms of their prey, so this is another interesting. Their prey. So they are described as the most powerful raptor in Africa, even though more so than the slightly heavier species, the Marshall and the Venturix eagle. One listing though says the crowned eagle is the only bird to a ranking of the 10 strongest living land creatures pound for pound, with elsewhere the harpy eagle being listed. Since there's no actual test for them, it's kind of whatever. But their diet itself is mostly mammalian. One estimate of their prey range is 1 to 5 kilograms, which is based on their species. They'll eat a lot of things like rock hyraxes and stuff like that. And is roughly the same weight range typically attributed to Marshall or Venatrix's eagle. They'll eat a lot of rock hyrax, as you mentioned before. Smaller species under 2 kilos, and then adults can weigh something of 20 kilos, and larger species weights up to 20 kilos. So in dense forests, they tend to have slightly smaller hunting ranges. As I mentioned, they do eat a lot of hyraxes. They'll also eat things like vervet monkeys. How they hunt is they'll kind of spend a lot of time on the wing, and they'll locate a suitable hunting spot by watching for activity and on a perch, and then they will kind of maybe potentially even let out a soft whistle. Then they will often still hunt, then drop in and steal a prey from perch, and then what they'll do is kind of grab them, and the sharp talons may provide actually sufficient force to kill the prey on impact. If not, the trauma from it, they might just die from their injuries. And having killed on the ground, they actually can fly almost vertically, so they can carry their prey away, so they don't get pushed up by anything else. On rare occasions, they may actually hunt on the wing, flying slightly over the canopy and causing a cacophony amongst monkey groups until they detect their prey. And then they are often believed to take uneven portions into the trees and cache them, so they will do that. So when they eat big things, they will kind of, hide them as well. And pairs actually may collaborate in taking prey. So females will target male monkeys more often than males because they're bigger, they can handle it. In one case, actually, a female crowned eagle stalked a bushbuck calf over the course of 2 days, and it was repeatedly foiled when it tried to catch either by the mother bushbuck or a troop of yellow baboons. But yeah, they are quite big. The kind of strike and wait technique is actually used by quite a few predators. Things like Komodo dragons and great white sharks use it, so they'll often attack and then kind of follow and then let the prey die of its wounds, but often they will just kill in one go. So they occupy a unique niche. They're the only bird in which primates are the most commonly taken food item at the species level. So kind of similar to harpy eagles of the neotropics as well, but there's crested eagles as well. So yeah, very interesting in that regard. Though New World monkeys are a lot less smaller and less formidable than the Old World monkeys. So these guys will take a lot of like colobus and Margay monkeys. As well, they like red-tail monkeys, colobuses, Margays, blue monkeys, mono monkeys, other couple of monkeys, Diana monkeys. So those kind of monkeys are quite common prey. So they can get to excess of 2 kilos in adulthood. So they'll often galagos is another common one as well. They try to avoid, the big ones. Some big ones can get to about 15 kilos, but they may have been hunted before, so they give in to hunt adult black and white colobuses, which is quite big. And they will also eat the juveniles of baboons. So they'll eat juvenile like mandrills and chama baboons and stuff like that. So that's quite interesting. In terms of ungulate prey, they have been known to feed on small antelope and suids, so things like the red river hog, which is quite a common prey. Dik-diks and blue duiker, klipspringers, duikers, which are all really, really small. Even some greater kudu, they will prey on the calves of things like greater kudu and bushbuck, as you kind of mentioned before. Um, these, though though the ungulates, them eating ungulates is not as weird as them mostly taking monkeys. A lot of things like wedge-tailed eagles and golden eagles have been known to take a lot of ungulates, um, and larger herbivores. In terms of other prey, they do eat a lot of hyraxes, which are relative to elephants. Other mammals include giant pouched rats, giant squirrels, pangolins, tree pangolins, elephant shrews, mongooses, genets, jackals, even. Um, as well that can be prey for them, and they'll also resort to eating large birds such as guinea fowl, falcons, ibises, ostrich chicks, pigeons, hornbills, and even snakes and monitors and things like that often can be preyed as well. And they do occupy quite a unique niche. That they do eat similar prey as things like leopards, African golden cats, Nile crocodiles, dwarf crocodiles, rock pythons, chimps, and even larger monkeys like mandrills and baboons. So there is a bit of competition there, but they do kind of tend to avoid each other in most regards, and that's why they'll often fly away with prey because you don't want to attract a leopard to come eat them. Though young and inexperienced crowned eagles may be killed by large carnivores, some may be killed by crocodiles or honey badgers or cobras. But for the most part, they can live actually quite a long time. The average life expectancy is about 14 to 16 years, with some specimens actually living more than 30 years. So, so they they do compete with other things, but because they live in quite a diverse habitat. But typically they will die for them when they're young and experienced. But adults, just tend to avoid them, and stuff like that. In terms of their attacks on humans, there have been reports of them attacking humans. They have sometimes been even seen as, getting children as prey. There was actually one case of a 7-year-old boy who weighed approximately about 20 kilos, ambushed by an eagle who gouged his tail into the boy's throat and chest. But though it was ended by a woman who came upon and rescued the child by bludgeoning the eagle to death. So they have been known to hunt people. And we do have, as we mentioned, the tongue child, which is a Australopithecus, which was an ancestor, believed to be a potential ancestor or an extinct relative of humans, has a kind of evidence of them actually being hunted by a large eagle, which potentially could be the most likely candidate, as we mentioned before, and either the crowned eagle or an extinct relative of the crowned eagle likely once hunted them. But in terms of conservation, I believe they actually are considered least concern. No, they're threatened. So for the most part, they're doing pretty good. Though they're fairly common. Though they do decline where there's a lot of deforestation. So that's the kind of biggest issue. In areas, they're not very common areas. Lots of agriculture. Some areas they're low densities because of pretty much the absence of indigenous forests. They do really attack livestock, but there have been cases where they have been killed as well. Another big issue is bushmeat, which is quite a big trade. The bushmeat, which means they can compete with people for food, because they want the bushmeat. But for the most part, they are doing okay, and they have been bred in captivity by a few different zoos, and there are several wildlife rehabilitation centres that house crowned eagles in Africa. And due to their high-strung dispositions and a tendency to be aggressive, they are poorly suited for falconry. However, there are several eagles of the species used in England and sometimes in Africa, where they often have been used to kill locally overpopulated feral dogs. So they are doing quite well. They are considered near threatened, even though they are impacted things like deforestation. Being a forest species and all, that makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, that's the crowned eagle, done by Great Cakes Mod. A bit of a mouthful today, but we do love talking about these eagles. Whoever does all these eagles Wikipedias, they always like to chock full of them with information, which is always cool. It is nice to talk about these eagles. Very, very cool. Let's see what other little bits of information we can get. I'm feeling generous. Most powerful eagle, very large non-thieving eagle. Clumsy flyers. So yeah, that's probably partly because they are, adapted for, you know, they're not adapted for flying in the open. They're adapted for forests, weaving through forests. All right, we're going to carry on. Next up, we got last but certainly not least, we've got a very interesting animal here. So this is Paleoparadoxia. This is a very interesting animal. We'll get into what it is first and the group of what it is, and then we'll get into this particular species itself. Let's see if we can spot the male. And as you can see, they are aquatic. So let's see if we can spot the male here. There he is. So this is a Desmostalia. So I'll get into what a Desmostalia is, which is what Paleoparadoxia is a genus, and this is the group or the family, or order, probably the best way to put it. So Desmostalia means basically bundle pillar. So these guys are an extinct order of paleoungulate aquatic mammal, known from the North Pacific, from the early Oligocene to the late Miocene, so between 30 to 7 million years ago, and the only known extinct order of marine mammals. So very interesting, weird group, as we'll get into. So these are also an animal that has a lot of debate on who they're related to. So Desmostalia was typically considered to be an Afrotherian clade, so related to things such as sirens and proboscideans, so related to dugongs, manatees, and elephants. And they were traditionally kind of assigned to the Afrotherian clade Tethystheria, which was a group named after the Tethys, which was an ancient ocean where they believed to have evolved. And the relationship between these two groups has always been disputed. If the common ancestor of all these guys was semi-aquatic, then Proboscidea would have been secondary terrestrial. Then alternatively, Desmostalia and Sirenia could have evolved independently into aquatic mammals. The assignment of Desmostalia to Afrotheria has always been interesting from a biogeographical standpoint, given that Afrotherians, as you could guess, are all evolved in Africa, but these guys are actually found in the North Pacific, so they're found in places, like Japan, up into, Alaska and the US, so they were all from the North Pacific as well, so that's very interesting. So they're only found across the Pacific Rim, which is, as you could guess, very far away from Africa. This assignment had been potentially undermined in 2014 with cladistic analysis placing Athercoburids and Desmosilans, which was two group of punitive non-African Afrotheres, actually more closely related to Perissodactyls, so that's odd-toed ungulates, so horses, tapirs, and rhinos. However, a subsequent study showed that there's actually equal, number of characteristics necessarily from either Paleoungulata or Perissodactyla. So Paleoungulata, as you mentioned, is that group of, pseudo-ungulates, sub-ungulates like hyraxes, elephants, and sea cows. So it's kind of either or, it's a toss-up, depending on the characteristics. We really would know genetics to find out, but morphologically there is an equal number of traits that suggest them being related to either, elephants, hyraxes, and sea cows, or horses, tapirs, and rhinos. So it really kind of doesn't really hard to tell. But in terms of these guys, they were large, fully aquatic quadrupeds with massive limbs and short tails, with the smallest species being about 5 foot, with the largest species actually being similar size, and this actually may be one of the largest species, again similar in size to the Stellar sea cow, so a couple tons at least. You see that quite elongated skull. There's actually have quite expanded, zygomatic arches. As you can see there, they've got big bodies and everything there. We'll have a look at one swimming around the water because they may actually be fully aquatic. So really, really awesome. It's nice to see more use out of the hippo model. The mandible and maxilla have forward-pointing incisors and canine teeth and a reduced number of premolars. So these cheeks are considered to be brachydont or monodont with lots of cusps and things as well. So in terms of their behaviour, Desmostalians in general, based on their dental and skeletal forms, suggest these guys were aquatic herbivores living in littoral habitats, which is, in water, near the water, deep in the water. Their name, or the seafloor, their name refers to their highly distinctive molars, which each cusp is modified into whole columns. So a typical molar would resemble a cluster of pipes, or in this case, more molars, volcanoes. So this is another thing why they could be related to, paleoungulates or, horses and sea cows and things like that. Not horses, elephants and hyraxes and sea cows. Let's see if you can spot this one. Let's have a look at one of the babies. Let's talk about one of the babies. They're very, very cute. Anyway, they did not chew or eat their food like any other animal. They actually clenched its teeth, rooted up plants with the help of its tusks and powerful neck, and sucked them in using their throat muscles and the shape and the roof of their mouth. They also were believed to be aquatic based on a combination of characteristics. While their legs seem to have been adapted for terrestrial locomotion, as we mentioned, the number of other parameters confirm they were aquatic, such as them being found in marine strata or in rocks that are marine. The nares are retracted and the orbits are raised. It's very similar to things like hippos, great example. Levels of stable isotopes in their tooth enamel suggest they had an aquatic diet and environment. And they have a spongy bone structure that's actually quite similar to that of cetaceans or whales and dolphins. They're also based on a trunk and limb proportions comparison. They were suggested to be more terrestrial than aquatic, and clearly four-limb dominated swimmers, hence more sea bears and sea sloths. But however, more recent analyses that were more detailed suggested they were fully aquatic. So potentially them walking around on land like this would be considered inaccurate. You got these big boobly eyes here. Let's have a look at you again. So yeah, walking around like this right now may actually be inaccurate, and they may have been fully aquatic, so they couldn't come out on land. Even though this is, of course, based on the hippo, they may not have been able to walk in land like a hippo. So they've been fully aquatic like cetaceans and sirenians, with their limbs being incapable of supporting their body weight on land. Most recent studies vindicate this assessment, as Desmostylians have a thoracic morphology, or their chest and body were more similar to those of sirens and modern cetaceans than to semi-aquatic mammals. So as we mentioned, yeah, this standing around on land like this that they're doing right now might have actually been impossible for them, and they would have been fully aquatic. And their less dense bone structure in combination suggests that they have a lifestyle as an active swimmer and possibly even feeding on the surface, while other Desmostylians, like Paleoparadoxia, were primarily slow swimmers and potentially walked on the bottom of the water and were feeding on seagrasses and things at the bottom there. So in terms of their habitat, it suggests that some species would have been preferred shallow areas, but Paleoparadoxia would have preferred deeper offshore waters. And also from their distribution, as we mentioned, they were being grown from the northern Pacific Rim, so from southern Japan through Russia, the Orchard Islands, and down to California, so up that northern bit of Pacific, from the early Oligocene to the late Miocene. They are believed to be fully marine herbivores, and are thought to have actually been outcompeted by the ancestors of the stellar sea cow. So larger species would have been more specialized, which increased divergence to compete with Sirenians, and Sirenian diversity appears to increase with the decline of the Desmostylians. So it seems they were outcompeted by dugongs, which were the ancestors as well of the stellar sea cow. Both Desmostylians and North Pacific dugongs were specialists in kelp, and opposed to marine herbivorous mammals of other regions that eat seagrass. So, very interesting as well. In terms of, let's talk about classification. The type species is Desmostylus, which was found as a teeth, was originally considered a Sirenian by Marsh in 1888, and then one of the most comprehensive suggested they were aquatic and possibly Sirenian. Then an Austrian paleontologist, Orthnilo Abel, suggests they were actually a type of monotreme, so they thought they were multi-tuberculate. So these guys were considered the closest relative of platypus and echidna. But because then they were only known from skull fragments and bits of teeth and that, there was actually a complete skeleton found in 1941 that showed that they possessed 4 legs and very similar superficially to a hippopotamus. And another major find actually found an extensive group of giant tusked quadrupedal marine fossils as well. And despite living the similarities to elephants and manatees, they're considered quite distinct. And there was actually a new genus called Behemothetops from Oregon, suggests these guys had more proboscidean-like teeth and jaws than later ones. So the earlier ones may have been more proboscidean-like, quote-unquote, and then they would have lost that. And as we mentioned as well, Cooper et al. In 2040 indicates the similarities between elephants and manatees would have been due to convergent evolution, but not actually true relatedness. and they may actually be related to. They may actually be more closely related to horses and rhinos and tapirs, which makes a lot more sense because we know that Perissodactyls would have evolved in America, and these guys do live on the west coast of America, around California and stuff like that. So that makes a lot more sense in that regard, even though, it could toss up either way. So either convergence or, relatedness. Too bad we don't have any DNA from these guys to really confirm, because morphology, as we mentioned, that changes. That doesn't actually tell you relatedness, because, there's such thing as convergent evolution. You can't have something that's more related to something else unless they hybridize with them. So, yeah, very interesting in that regard. But we'll get to what Paleoparadoxia is itself. So, Paleoparadoxia lived during the North Pacific coastal regions during the Miocene, so found about 20 to 10 billion years ago, and ranged from Japan up into Alaska and down to Mexico. So these guys would have fed primarily on seagrasses and seaweeds, with their jaws and the angular teeth resemble a backhoe bucket, and they have quite bulky bodies that were well adapted for swimming and underwater foraging. They were also originally interpreted as amphibious. They are thought to have been fully marine, like their relatives the Sirenians, spending most of their time walking around the water, like hippos, like marine hippos, and they seem to have shown habitat preferences for deeper offshore waters. Recent discoveries also extended their known geographical range, with the oldest record from the Northwest Pacific actually suggesting a much earlier presence in the region. This finding indicates that Paleoparadoxia had a wider distribution and potentially migrated different migratory patterns understood, which hints at a complex early evolution within the Desmostalia order. There is a couple different species. This is Tabani, I believe this is Tabani, which is actually considered quite large. There's one specimen that's about 7 foot long, about 80 centimeters or 2 feet in height, and weighed about 582 kilograms in body mass, while there's other specimens that got quite a bit bigger that would range between 1,048 kilograms or 3.2 metric tons in weight. So basically comparable in size to a hippo or a rhino, so very large animals. And it was actually named Cornwallis originally, but then it was kind of also put in the genus Paleoparadoxia. So another really cool one there. There's other genera include Neoparadoxia, which is another relative of this guy, comes from the Miocene. Very similar, just a bit younger. And this was the latest and greatest, also Behemothatops, which is a few different species. But yeah, and they can see that may actually not be able to walk like that. So yeah, this is probably another big inaccuracy there. But yeah, when we saw them walk into the water, that's how they would be. Let's actually finish it off with them in the water, because I think we want to finish off doing something that it actually could have done. But yeah, often these guys, just a little PSA, often these guys tend to be reconstructed actually really, really, shrink wrapped and look really, really weird. But this is a great example of Great Cakes. Great Cakes is actually an excellent paleo artist and really makes these extinct animals that we've never seen before seem like real animals. It's really cool to make more use of the hippo. So yeah, I'm definitely really, really proud of Great Cakes and what they've done here. So yeah, I think this will be a great place to end the video. So I'm going to make sure to thank everyone. Thank you, J Aquatics, lovely fish. Thank you, Sky Polaris. You've done a great job with your lion and your gibbon. Also, Great Cakes, you've stolen the game with the eagle and Paradoxia. But you also can't forget your Gazella spyra, which is a really, really cool extinct antelope that, does these wonderful reconstructions of extinct animals. I'm definitely a big fan. And then we've got Gaboy and General Pizza, who collaborated to make the Margay. Really, really awesome to see that species well represented. So, yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.